Call to order the meeting of the zoning board of Wednesday, August 29, 2018. And even before we first start, can everybody stand up? We want to have a moment of silence for the gentleman who used to sit in this chair, Bob Messier, who just recently passed away. So,
I did send flowers to basket on behalf of the zoning board, and I got a thank you card from Mrs. Messier, thanking.
I know some of the board members actually have to wait. Second thing is we'd like to announce that Rick Banks is a full member on the zoning board. It's kind of a housekeeping type situation on that. First thing we'll do is do the Pledge of Allegiance. Hey guys. Rick, you can lead us, man.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stay standing. Peter's going to do the prayer.
Lord, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Amen. Okay, Paul, I want to take a roll call. See who's here.
Peter Kelsey? Alan Horrick?
Here.
Richard Banks?
Here.
Michael McPhillips?
Yeah.
And Justin Kuchar.
Here.
There is a quorum on record.
That's good. Somebody want to approve the minutes from May 30th? Make a motion. Any commentaries, other commentaries, non-commentaries?
Mr. Chairman, so I move that we accept the minutes as given.
Second.
Second.
Okay, perfect, beautiful. Okay, we don't need to vote on that, right, Al? That's a voice vote. Okay, let's get to the reason we're here tonight. It's a petition number 2.
I didn't know if you want to put on record that Justin Kuchar was good enough.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Justin's going to sit in as an alternate. Let me get first. Okay, number 7, petition number 2018-4. Applicant Joseph A. DiMartino, owner of the same, the premises 619 Wakefield Street, plat 038, lot 135, zone usage R10. Proposed use, the applicant is seeking a special use permit to use his property as a 2-family home for approval to rent an existing approved in-law to non-family member under Section 5 Use Regulations A-2, dwelling 2-family of the zoning ordinance of the town of West Warwick as amended.
Mr. Chairman, first I'd like to note for the record that I marked the exhibits. Exhibit number 1, the application. Exhibit number 2, the project narrative. Exhibit number 3, the radius map. Exhibit number 4, the abutters list. Exhibit number 5, the northeast data sheet. Exhibit number 6, a 3-page site plan. Exhibit number 7, the zoning certificate. Exhibit number 8, a May 5th, 2008 zoning decision, file number 2008-6. Exhibit number 9, the tax collector's report. Exhibit number 10, a copy of the notice. And exhibit number 11, the notice and green cards.
Perfect.
Thank you. Sure. Thomas Cronin, attorney for the applicant and owner Joseph DiMartino. Would you like to swear me in or just have me proceed?
Nobody believes lawyers, so you don't have to.
Okay, great. Sorry. I certainly would like to be joining the board in remembering Mr. Messier. Someone who appears before the board regularly, certainly the civility that he brought to the board was much appreciated. And his thoughtful questioning resolved many an issue. From there, though, owner and applicant Joseph DiMartino, 619 Wakefield Street. This is a lot that's zoned R10. We're here for a special use permit to use the existing structure as a two-family, as required by the West Warwick zoning ordinance. The current use is a single residence on a little more than a half an acre. It's built in its current configuration in 2008. That building in the current configuration in 2008 has led to some confusion in the application that I just want to start off by talking about. So when we as the applicant say existing in-law apartment, we're talking about the physical structure of the building, the integrated apartment above the garage, not the use. So they're used interchangeably and often for lack of a better phrase. So, but we're coming here before you tonight as a resident of the town of West Warwick who has a home, 619 Wakefield Street. Its current use is a single-family residence. It does have integrated into it an apartment. And it's that apartment that we're proposing to use as a two-family. So there'd be no changes to the structure of the building. The change would be to the use of the building. Back, just for the record, back in 2008, they did appear before planning and this board and obtain the proper authorization to use the in-law apartment as long as it was used by a family member. And once that use by a family member came to an end, it was agreed in the decision that that right to use that space as an in-law apartment would no longer be valid. And that's what brings us before you here tonight. So we're asking for something different. Times change, families change, and in this case, that space is no longer being used consistently as an in-law apartment. This is a piece of property that's located next to Midville Golf Course, coming down the hill on Wakefield Street, across the street from the Governor's Hill development. You'll note from the green cards on Paula's desk, the notice list on this was substantial. And we had to notify quite a few people, but that's where it is. The current structure, just shy of 3,000 square feet, 2,997 square feet. It's 24 feet in height. Of that, about just shy of 2,000 square feet, 1,936 square feet is the residence of Mr. and Mrs. DiMartino, and 919 square feet is the apartment above the garage, or the space above the garage. So we're not here asking for any variances. There are no new utilities proposed. There's off-street parking available in the driveway. There are no dimensional variances needed or requested with regard to the existing structure. The second floor apartment itself, the 919 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. It has a kitchen, family dinette, kind of open floor plan for the remainder. The structure itself currently has 2 front entrances facing Wakefield Street. If you are facing the home, the one on the right is primarily used by Mr. and Mrs. DiMartino, and the one on the left enters into a common hallway which can be used to go upstairs to the second floor above the garage. Behind that common space is another hallway which leads from the 2-car garage to the kitchen of Mr. and Mrs. DiMartino, which is also behind a set of locked doors. So that's the entryway proposed for the 2-family. So Mr. and Mrs. DiMartino will use the entrance to the right looking at the home, and the proposed apartment will use the entrance on the left, and they will secure the doors in that hallway. The uses around the current uses around this R10 zone are mostly residential, with the exception of the golf course. A good number of the uses are condominium uses. with single-family homes. It's a mix of those two uses, with the exception of the golf course. And we don't propose it to use it for anything but residential purposes going forward, and we don't feel that it'll change the nature of the neighborhood or create a nuisance in the neighborhood, hinder the future development of the town by increasing traffic on Wakefield Street or anything like that. It conforms to the zoning and comprehensive plan to use this area for residential uses. I have I should have started off by apologizing. Mr. DiMartino is away in Arkansas on business. So as soon as I say away in Arkansas, you know he's not on vacation. But I did talk to the solicitor, we agreed that he'd be excused for this evening. But if you have any questions that need to be answered directly, I have his daughter, Lisa DiMartino, with me. Or, if there's something that simply cannot be resolved without him, I would intend to ask for a continuance for a date certain until the next available hearing. And with that, so I'll take whatever questions the board might have to try to clarify some of these points.
Before any questions, if I might just make a couple of comments. 2 points that Tom made. First, as to the stack of notices. Our legislature, in its wisdom, has said that if you have one unit of a 200-unit condominium development that is within the 200 feet, instead of giving the association notice,
You gotta go to
you have to
every
notify
every single
all
homeowner, right?
200. The second thing is to kind of summarize what Tom said and put it just in a little different words, is that the board should look at this tonight and forget there was ever an accessory family dwelling. It doesn't exist today. So you're looking at a structure, and do you want to grant a two-family dwelling unit? That's the question before the board.
Pete, before you start, I just have a couple of questions, okay? Probably different than yours, okay? Does I want to use the term in-law apartment, for lack of a better term. Does that person have access to the garage to keep a car in the garage?
No,
Or just Mr. and Mrs. DiMartino, that's their garage?
that is correct.
Okay, and the structure of the building, the total structure, was that built all in 1979, or was part of it built in 79 and part built in 2008? We got a shake of our head here.
Sorry.
So
Hi.
That's fine.
Hold on one second, raise your right hand.
What is your name, please?
My name's Lisa DiMartino,
And your address?
621 Wakefield Street.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So my house, 621 Wakefield Street, was built in 1979. It's a separate house. It's behind 619?
The one way in the back?
Yes.
The
That's-
one way in the back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was built in 1979. The house that we're discussing tonight was built in 2008, the entire structure.
The front building?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that was built in 2008, not 1979?
No, my house, 621 was built in 1979. So the whole house, including the space we're talking about, the in-law structure,
Yes.
was all built in 2008.
The brown house, I call it the brown
The
house.
brown house, yes.
Okay.
The applicant says the house is
No, no.
Just for some clarification and some background. I believe your parents built that house in 1979 and they lived there?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
In
that's
619 or 620?
621.
621.
Yes.
Okay.
621 in
Is the house in the back.
in 1979.
Okay,
Mhm.
was built.
Okay, correct.
Because I was unsure who lived there.
I lived there.
Obviously, now we know that question's answered. Your parents built the house at 619 and were residents in 619 when the house was completed?
Correct,
Okay.
And that's 2008?
correct.
I have a couple of other questions, kind of background too. And
Sure.
I know we've been instructed to not base our decision on the fact that there was an in-law apartment granted in the, from the planning board and zoning, with, even in the building process, at the beginning of the building process and the blueprints, were the walls of the in-law apartment above the garage, were they built in 2008? or was that done later?
The entire Brown house
Thank you.
was built in 2008, including the in-law and Miss DiMartino's sister and her son were the residents at that time.
So the interior walls were built at the same time as the rest of the house?
That's correct.
Okay, so the apartment, as we know it as the in-law apartment, approximately 900 square feet, was in fact utilized and lived in right from when the house was built in 2000.
Right from the get-go,
Correct.
basically.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, fire away.
This is somewhat of again, just for a background question. I know that this is actually the third time that Mr. DiMartino went, and I know your mom and dad very well. I lived next door to him in Brookfield Platte when we were in high school. Also, I know your mom, Pat. My question, looking at all the information, and I want to ask your counselor. He probably has the answer, or he maybe has the information. Do you have, or was there certification presented every biennial year, presented to the building official?
So, in the information that I've been able to gather, I haven't found any documentation of certification biannually. I'm not aware of any.
Okay. Well, since you're here now for the third time on this property, I would almost assume that there was none done.
I don't speak with any knowledge, other than my guess from working with the building
many
office,
building officials?
that there are less than full compliance
Yeah.
with that requirement of
Right.
the,
And I would say that that's accurate to many or almost
oh,
all of them. All of the
in,
in-law apartment authorized by zoning.
in defense of the zoning of the building office, I think that what I get involved with violations,
You got plenty to
they've
do.
got a lot more to do than
Yeah.
worry
I
about
I
something.
understand. Okay.
Lisa, do you still live in 621?
I do.
Okay.
When did your sister and niece
Yes.
move out of the building?
She got married.
Probably.
My nephew's going to be 8. He was still living there just before she had him, so
Okay.
about 8 years ago.
So it's been vacant for approximately 8 years?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's, those are my questions for now.
What are we using for the driveway for parking purposes?
So there's,
I know you have a big circular driveway. there.
well, there's a driveway agreement recorded in the land evidence record
Okay.
that specifies the area dedicated to this, the Brown House, as we're
Yes.
calling it,
Okay.
619.
619.
So the parking for this unit would be on the area, the driveway dedicated, which essentially the driveway comes in and splits,
Yeah, goes
off to the left,
off
so the,
side, yep.
you know, and the nicely paved area leading up to the 619 is along that would be the tenant parking.
It's just one, no? It's only one, right? It's only one, Peter's is just one parking place, there's one parking place, right? That you would need.
Yeah, they can have a max of 2 bedrooms, and they need to provide at least one additional parking, one dedicated parking spot.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure if that's the correct answer. In today's building codes, it used to be 1.5 parking places per unit. Now it's 2 parking places per unit. Now, the garages also count as a parking location. In that calculation, Al's looking at me like,
No, I'm only smiling because.
you have no idea what's gonna come out of the.
No, for many years, we had a zoning board member who would not allow
Absolutely.
The garage
the
is-
garage to be considered as a parking
Absolutely.
space because somebody might park behind it and you couldn't get your car out.
Well, that,
Stick
I
with the
don't know
parking.
who
Definitely
that
a stick
person
with the
is.
parking.
Yeah, definitely.
everyone has their opinion, but I know personally, when I went through the
Yes.
process,
You're correct.
my garage that I had on my property counted as a
Yes.
parking space.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, that being said, you technically would have to, you wouldn't be able to park in front of the garage, although you can park in tandem if it's not in the garage, I believe. I'm not sure. But adding another parking space there really isn't, I think, one of the main issues that we're going to be dealing with. So whether it's
That's not a question.
one parking space that needs to be paved, or if there's not paved, another parking space with the size of property that you have there, I don't think is an issue at all.
I think the issue would be that you wouldn't want anyone backing out onto Wakefield Street.
Yes, oh,
And I don't think we're in a circumstance where that's gonna become an issue.
members, if you go to this particular drawing that you have, you can see that the driveway is fairly lengthy. It's probably 2 cars wide to begin with. They could probably have a party, Josie Martino can have a party with the family, a pretty good-sized family.
Yes, we're very.
Brothers and sisters, know them all. You could probably put 20 cars in that driveway, so it's a fairly lengthy driveway, even though that is off the main driveway of the original house, 621. I did have one more piece of information that I just wanted to point out. I don't know if it's information or not.
You're looking to ask a question.
One of the handouts that we got says project narrative. Would I be correct that that's not from you?
It's from them.
It's from, okay, so I just want to point out to the members,
Yes, it's 2008.
oh, it's in this packet.
I understand, I got it.
It's
That
in
was
this
filed
packet.
with the
It's-
application.
There's no date on it, but the project narrative paper is not from our solicitor, and it's not to be confused with of a suggestion or a matter of law. This is brought by the brought by the legal counsel of the applicant, and it is his opinion, and his opinion only, okay?
That's fine. I have a question for you.
Oh.
Peter was asking a question, but I was asking Alan a question. Is somebody living from 2008 to 2016?
No, no, occasionally, someone would stay there for a night if we had, like if my brother was visiting from California,
Okay.
he and his wife would stay there for a few nights while they were here.
Okay, so
or-
it wasn't used on a
Not-
constant every single
No.
day basis for multiple years?
No, it has
By
not.
one family member?
No.
Oh, okay.
And that was going to be one of my questions, were there any alterations or changes to it? That's a long period of time, so I was just curious if anything else had changed in there.
No, there's been no changes.
By the way, if you get any,
What was the total square footage?
It's just shy of 3,000 square feet, 2,937 square feet for the whole house,
No, just for the accessory.
919.
919.
Okay,
Up, that's not including the staircase, that's the upstairs
right.
that's
space.
just
The living space.
Living area upstairs.
For the special use, it's not to exceed 800 square feet of living space? Would that have to be something that we include?
What?
But not, the accessory dwelling unit?
Accessory is gone. That, you're not considering accessory.
So this is a two-family, this is
It's a
converting to a
two-family.
two-family.
We're just.
Under
Oh,
those.
okay. All right, all right.
So the accessory use, the in-law
That doesn't exist.
doesn't exist anymore.
What you're doing is deciding whether or not you are willing to turn that one-family house
Right.
into a two-family house. That's the sole question before you.
So the dimensions don't matter?
Well, they do matter, but they're
Well-
not gonna change.
But, yeah, and they meet them all.
Yeah.
As I read the ordinance, they meet.
They meet, no, as I read it, I don't remember the dimensions. But when I read it, there are no variances required. And I did discuss this also with the town planner.
That's right.
I have a question for the counselor. Can you tell the board where the closest two-family unit is in that area, in proximity to 619?
It's probably not close. The, on Wakefield Street itself, the single-family homes, it's the side streets that have the multi-use condominium, multifamily zone. And you'd probably have to get down to Monsignor DeAngelis Manor to find, apartment-style living. I'm not aware of a neighbor that has a two-family house,
I am
but,
not sure of the condos near there, the governor's
yeah.
farm. I'm not sure whether they have multifamily, but the big development across the street near Midville.
Behind
Yes.
Midville, yes.
I
Down
can't
down
think-
near the river.
Yeah, but I can't think of the name of it. River Farms.
River Farms would,
Yes.
in my opinion, would be the closest
Yes.
multifamily, multifamily apartment.
I know they
So-
have multifamily.
Multifamily, in other words, they're not condominiums, they are apartments.
No, they're condominiums.
But there's some,
In
there's
River
some
Farms-
apartments there too?
They're
They're all condos?
they're all condominiums, however, condominiums may be rented out,
Correct.
but the ownership in all of them, but there are, I know, at least duplexes
Right.
within River Farms.
Duplexes.
That's a duplex.
A duplex is not a condominium.
It's yes, it is. Condominium
You mean
and,
two units side by side?
yes,
Condominiums?
yeah,
Yes.
I live in right now, there's myself and,
So you share a common wall?
yeah,
Right. Those are
the
condominiums.
condominiums.
So I'm not sure where there is where would the closest true multifamily,
It might be Providence Street.
possibly on Wilson Street?
I know, you have to, even though it's a condominium,
Yeah,
they are two-family dwelling units,
right.
so,
Yeah, but they're
But
separated by a wall.
they're
They're
also,
separated by a wall, though, aren't
they're
they?
also considered a single-family resident.
Yeah.
They're taxed as a single-family
yeah,
resident.
each unit is, yeah.
Each unit
They're
definitely
owned,
is.
Yeah, okay,
they're
yeah,
owned
yes.
by two different people.
Yes, yes,
But they have common walls.
yeah.
Some of them have common walls.
Some don't.
One's up on Greenbush Road, some of them are single, most of them are two, and
Yep.
there's gonna be a couple of threes up there.
Yep.
So would it be correct, I think it would be correct to say that a multifamily in that area is non-existent.
Well, all of the condominiums are zoned multifamily,
Well, is
both
Mr.
in Governor
Di-
Hills
is
and in
Mr.
River Farms.
DiMartino considering making that a condominium?
No, it's a different use, but
Well, it
to
is a
use,
Right, it
to-
is a different use.
you asked me the actual question,
Right.
where's the nearest rented apartment in a house, and I don't know the answer to that question. But the condominiums in the area are zoned multifamily. And there's definitely a definite distinction.
Fire away if you want.
No, nope, I
Okay.
feel like I've got enough information at this point.
Okay.
How many, do you have a sense of how many renters?
They don't have an actual tenant lined up or anything like that. So, I mean, I think, Mr. and Mrs. DiMartino, this is their primary residence. I think they're gonna try to rent it to one individual person, who, quiet, like they are, but they don't have anybody identified at this point.
Go ahead, Peter, fire away, man.
I just want to bring this point out. even having conversation with prior members of this zoning board, one of the strongest considerations to try and get a zoning change correct and a variance granted or rejected, one of the biggest, I want to say this properly, one of the biggest problems or problem children, one of the biggest problems of making that type of decision, in my understanding, following the zoning and planning, town council boards, a good part of my adult life, many times that decision, when granted, comes back to bite the town in the butt. Because in the application process, when Mr. and Mrs. DiMartino asked for the land to be separated in 2007, when they came before the zoning board in 2008, it was talked about all through that decision-making process. No, this will not ever become a multifamily separate apartment. We will not ask to have it changed if granted the in-law residence variance. I personally asked Paula for the tape for that meeting. I have it here tonight, if the board wants to hear it, or you can.
Can you summarize?
Well,
You can give
that's
us some- you can
that's
give
it
a
in the
strong
summary.
summarization.
That's it in the summary. I
Yeah,
have it,
and
I have
you
it
can
tiered up.
summarize it.
but with that,
We trust
along
your
with,
summary on it.
along with the fact that most people that put the application forward forget to get a certification, or that the building officials don't have the time to go and look. Just putting that aside for now, this type of variance, when granted, does come back to haunt the zoning board time and time again.
I think
First
that,
name and-
I think,
Tom, thank you.
I think that is,
Thank you, Tom.
the decision sums up what Peter has been saying. Stipulation number 2.
Yeah.
Special use shall automatically cease and no longer be valid upon such accessory dwelling unit being occupied by any person other than the immediate family, or 2, to convey the conveyance to any other person. And I think those of you who were here with a prior board member consistently entrances and egress,
Yeah,
and,
egress and ingress.
you know, so that
There's just one last thing that I'd like to add. And I'll ask my solicitor to correct me if I'm wrong. In a not-for-profit situation, I think these things have been granted based on their merit. But for a for-profit situation, I believe we have a guideline. The zoning board will not grant a variance for profit of the applicant. I'm not sure if that's a quote, but I'm pretty close.
You're in the ballpark.
Now,
Usually call financial gain. As in,
Lisa,
as in general, it's called financial gain.
I believe this is straightforward. This is for financial gain.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to that
You
point?
sure may, but he's got a
Sure.
pretty strong case, but go ahead.
So that is a valid point with regard to a request for a variance, a dimensional variance, and solely for that reason. This is not a request for a dimensional variance under Article 1, Section 9, where that language that you're referring to appears. This is a request for a special use permit on Article 1, Section 10, which does not contain that
the
language.
5 standards that the board considers, it's compatible with neighboring land uses.
Yeah, with these.
It will not create a nuisance in the neighborhood. It will not hinder future development of the town. It will conform to all applicable sections of the zoning code and is in conformance with the purposes and intent of the comprehensive plan.
Those five.
There's two separate things.
Yeah.
Peter,
Those
what
five
you were
feet.
referring to was the standards for a variance, not a special use.
Okay, this does not
This is a
need a
special.
variance.
No,
There are no variances.
no, this is a special use because you already met all that other stuff. Why it's not in there with the five?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one more comment.
Yep.
Mr. Kelsey brings up a point in support of his argument as to what my client represented back in 2007 and 2008. I did not represent him then. He is not present. I cannot respond to those remarks. I'd ask for continuance to a date certain to continue, to complete this hearing.
Under what pretense?
On-
Would you like to continue this for?
So that I might respond to
To which-
to valid evidence that
To
that
which-
Mr.
to
Kelsey.
which actual point?
To the actual point that it's been represented that Mr. DiMartino or his counsel at that time, I'm not sure, made the representation that they would never come back before this board.
Well, the document right here, actually, this document that we have here does say
The
special-
decision,
the decision
right,
occupied by any person other than immediate family member,
right?
advanced on the premises to anyone than the present owner.
I think
Right?
that, Tom,
Am I reading that wrong?
Well,
no, I think, Tom, you have, that the tenor of the zoning board over many, many years was a very serious concern about accessory family dwellings, because prior to, and it was the zoning board that led to a lot of the added language to our accessory dwelling unit code, that they would just go for a period of time and then become a rental unit. And one of the reasons that all of the additional sections of the accessory dwelling unit came from the board to make it pretty clear that once you were done with the accessory family dwelling, it was over. We didn't want to go, the board was clear they didn't want to go to the rental, so I think that may be where the.
I'm 100% in agreement with what your solicitor has said. But that is not the situation that we have here. We had an accessory use. We had a family member living in that accessory use. She stopped living in that accessory use. We did not rent it to a third party. And so to represent that we would never come back before this board as allowed by the zoning ordinance and waive our rights forevermore to make application as allowed in the zoning ordinance for a special use permit for a different use, seems to be a point that I need to explore with my client, that he would have waived his ability to ever come before this board and ask for a different use, such as a two-family or commercial or really anything else at that time. I would be delinquent in my representation of Mr. DiMartino to accept that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Peter.
I totally agree with you. But the zoning board chairman in 2008 and other members of the zoning board, Alan was on the committee back then.
Yep.
He's the only member that was on the committee that's still on the
Presently
committee.
constituted.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly what Alan's comments was, but I have the tape. I have it keyed to where the chairman is asking Mr. DiMartino. I have a recorder in my car that I didn't think I would need, but to your satisfaction, we'll be glad to play it. More so, even if he did at that time said, well, I have no intent to ever come back, or language of that nature, not specific language, but language of that nature, things change. And what was dead on right in 2008 is 10 years later. So I'm not begrudging anyone to have a reason to change their mind 10 years later. We're in a different society today. But I also want to point out to the board, I thought that the profit or non-profit would be an issue, and it's not, so we're going to put that aside. But in your narrative, Mr. Cronin, you specifically state that it wouldn't change the narrative, or it wouldn't change the shape of the neighborhood. And I can tell you that I feel that it absolutely will. When you have that beautiful house, absolutely gorgeous house at 619, and you have their original homestead at 621, and you have Joe's uncle's house, Alex DiMartino, to the right of 619. And you have all the condominiums across the street. They probably are now worth 300,000 and up. In my opinion, I would say that if I was a neighbor, that I feel that the land, two things, the land or that acceptance of the zoning board variance, that acceptance would possibly reduce the value of my house if I was a neighbor. But moreover, to this board, we have to be careful that we're not setting a precedence also.
You good? You sure? You fire away, man.
No, I mean,
You sure?
the part that's
Forever hold your
swirling
peace.
around in my
Speak,
mind
man.
right now is the fact that from looking at this structure, you wouldn't even really, the perception isn't going to be that it's a multifamily. On paper, it will be a multifamily. That's,
Physically every day of the week, people coming in, people coming out.
you mean into that
If you-
apartment
if you-
versus going in and out of the house, or?
If you have personal knowledge of rental property, then
Well,
go ahead.
This is like,
Yeah,
this is,
you know, no,
we're
I
at
think
a
we're
point
under-
of, you two guys are gonna discuss,
no,
we're
I
gonna
think we're
close,
under
we're gonna
discuss-
close and we're gonna
I think
discuss.
we're under discussion.
Okay, we're
Okay.
gonna,
Okay,
if you
that
have
makes
a
sense.
question for him, you have
Nope.
a question for
Anyone else
him,
has a question,
we ask
Justin,
questions.
or-
Commentary is next.
Well, do we
I'll
have to
actually-
act upon his request?
Not necessarily.
Should have asked my
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a couple quick things.
Fire away.
So based on Mr. Kelsey's representations, that he's not going to rely on Mr. DiMartino's waiver of whatever right he had back in 2008. In that circumstances change, which is a
Yeah,
generous and reasonable
absolutely.
position, I withdraw my request to continue the matter. And in response to his pointing out that I state in my project narrative that I don't think it'll change the character of the neighborhood, what I specifically state and indicate is that it's a residential use in a residential zone, and that in that aspect, it's consistent. Thank you.
Have it on the record. Have at it. No, you're good, probably. You
I
done now?
I have no further
You're done
questions.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, make a motion to close the public, make a motion.
You guys are all set?
Mr. Chairman, this is a public hearing, and I think we have to at least,
Well, any
yeah.
remarks? Is there anybody in the audience that has any commentary or questions, besides the nice lady standing here?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and
I'll
go
second.
into discussion.
Second.
Let's make a motion open
Just
second.
vote, just a vote. No roll call, just a vote.
All those in
Discussion
favor?
first, right?
Aye.
And You
Aye.
gotta close the, vote to close the meeting.
Vote to close the meeting.
Aye.
Aye.
You guys have it.
No discussion.
Okay, we know where you stand, Pete.
Well, I'm gonna add a little bit something.
Okay.
Your dad is a year older than I am. Your mom and I think are the same age, or maybe she's a year younger. I'm in a similar situation where I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my residence on East Greenwich Ave. My two children are in North Carolina. I'm looking for a condominium in Raleigh. At a certain point in my life, having our first grandchild now at our late age, decisions have to be made as far as real estate in my family. Selling a house that is too big or too not any longer needed is a fact of every homeowner that happens at any one particular time during their life. I'm facing that myself. The only thing that may be justifiable for your mom and dad is to sell the house at the high value, sell it as a beautiful house that has the ability for a family to live there, not under the auspices or the legal standing of a multifamily house, but as it now stands for a large family and extended family. But for the reasons that I've stated during our inquiry, and feel that it absolutely would not fit the,
Since you're on the discussion, could you just bullet point your reasons?
yes,
for the
that's what I'm
decision?
gonna do now, okay. I do find that very specifically that it would change the, I wanna pick the right word.
Character of the neighborhood.
Thank you. It will change the character of the neighborhood. I'm constantly looking for things around my house. Talked to a Realtor today. There's a couple of things that need to be changed in my area. Those things will always happen. Some things we have control over, some things we have to accept. The house is too big, the house is too small, my family is not here. I can appreciate what has been done for his family. I know that they're great family people. They come from two great families. But for those reasons, I will be voting against.
Great. On to the next.
So as I was stating previously, in my mind, on paper, and what you will see when you go up to this property, two totally different things in my mind. However, it was brought up earlier, and I think it's a great point, that it's setting a precedence for future changes in there. So, weighing those options, and, I would vote no, just to not set that precedent going forward.
Similar to what both Peter and Richard have said, I mean, unfortunately, I feel the same way with the fact of it would kind of change the characteristic of the area, and it does kind of start a precedence for possibly further change in the precedence of the area, and for that reason, I'd have to vote no as well.
Go ahead, Alan.
Based on the testimony we've heard tonight, and also being very familiar, having driven by that house millions of times up and down Wakefield Street, again, if you looked at it, you would not be aware that it's, as an in-law, it's nothing more than just a very large, very nice, single-family home. And based on that, as far as the concerns about setting a precedent, I don't share those concerns. Again, as the board, we are instructed to always take each case individually and base our decisions on the merits of the individual case. So I don't worry about, setting a precedent that, well, we did it for this one, we can do it for this one, because every situation is different. They'll have different facts, different status. As far as the special use permit goes, I do find that it would be compatible with neighboring land uses. With one additional renter or one additional tenant living there, I don't see that would create a nuisance in the neighborhood, especially given the fact that the owners of the house will also be still living there, still occupying that house. I don't find that this would hinder future developments of the town. I believe it will conform to all applicable sections of our zoning ordinance. and it is in conformance with the purposes and intent of the comprehensive plan. My only stipulation that I would like to make is, some sort of expiration on that special use permit, that it would pass, when the house is sold. Can we do that?
No,
So once we grant this?
once it's granted, it runs with the
Could
land,
be sold next week.
Okay.
runs with the land.
Okay. But having said all that, I would be voting in favor of the applicant.
Okay, I'll go last. The proposed use, we have there are 5 burdens approved to be met. In this instance, I feel that 2 of them are not met, which is the compatibility with the neighboring land use. You drive up and down that street and it's all single-family homes. It's not 2-family homes, it's single-family homes, and it's a beautiful home, too. It's really nice, okay? And I don't think it conforms to the purpose and the intent of the comprehensive plan of the town. So I don't think you meet 2 of the 5 burdens, so that way, for that reason, I will be voting no for this application.
Take a motion.
You're up.
Make a motion. We need a motion?
Need a motion?
Well, you make a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. Do we have to make a motion?
He'll do it.
It's gotta be in the affirmative.
Yeah.
Have to be in the-
For petition 2018-4, the applicant Joseph A. DiMartino, 619 Wakefield Street, Plat 38, Lot 135, special use permit. That we vote to approve a single-use permit to convert a single-family dwelling unit into a 2-family dwelling unit. Just a second.
Second.
Peter Kelsey,
No.
Richard Bates,
No.
Alan Hart,
Yes.
Justin Kuzu,
No.
Michael McPhillips.
No. Petition is denied.
Just right. Before a motion to adjourn, with the unfortunate passing of Bob, and I just, this is my suggestion to the board. We have that, we filled one of the seats on the board itself. It's my understanding that the council will be filling Bob's seat very soon. So as the board,
It won't be till the second meeting in October because of advertising, correct?
Well, right now, I'm advertising for Richard's seat, which has to be advertised 3 times.
that's an alternate.
That
But
was
you
for
can-
the alternate.
You can start advertising it now, can't you?
Yeah, it's already done.
No, I mean for the,
No, for
for the
Bob's.
full seat.
For Bob's, no, it would be starting September 18th. So it would run
So
3 times.
all I'm saying is that it will be within the relative few, and I just, is my personal feeling, and I throw, it's not my decision, it's the board's decision, but I would suggest that you wait until the 5 full seats are in place before the election of new officer. I mean, I just throw that out as a personal opinion on it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
I've been led to believe from council discussion that they're not gonna delay on filling the vacancies.
There are applicants for that seat.
I have 1 application so far.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
So moved.
So moved. We're adjourned.
Did you get one? Did you get one in there?
Take care.
Five.
Say a little more.